For students logging into the ePAD, you will access via your specific university web address, obtained from your university. The screen displayed is an example of what the sign-in page looks like. Each university sign-in page will look a little different. If you are using your university credentials, use the University Sign-in button. If you are not using university credentials, enter your email address and password, then click the Sign-in button. Once we have successfully logged into the My Progress ePAD, we will be presented with the summary dashboard. Starting on the left-hand side, we have the information pane. The information pane displays information on the student with their name and email address. Also, a section to display a student profile picture. The large dial displays a summary of the number of hours the student has spent in practice. This dial will update in real time once the student submits their practice hours. Below this, we have the institution details, the student number, and the name of the cohort. At the top of the screen, we have the current or most recent placement details. We can select this section to access all the documentation for the current or most recent practice. Next, we have the What's Next and Don't Forget sections. The layout of these sections will vary depending on the size of your screen. These are used as reminders on assessments to be completed. On the What's Next section, we can see deadline dates displayed next to the forms. Deadline dates in the ePAD are soft deadline dates, meaning they do not hold any functionality, only to act as reminders to complete the forms in a timely manner. These can be useful for both students and practice staff as guidance for when forms should ideally be completed by. When a student completes a form from the list, the next form to be completed will be displayed. The Don't Forget section works in a similar way. However, the forms displayed will refresh each time the summary dashboard reloads. Next, we have the Parts section for the full 3-year program. With the Parts sections, we have Part 1, and in this example, it is the current part. And we have Parts 2 and 3. We can view all the relevant documentation to those parts by clicking on those sections. We also have a clickable section to view the ongoing achievement record. To look at the documentation for the current or most recent placement, click on the Current Placement section. On the Placement page, we start on the Overview tab. The Overview tab, as the name implies, provides a useful overview on the student's progress. On the current or most recent placement, we can view the documentation in this view for the start, midpoint, final and anytime sections. We also have sections for the part-specific and the ongoing achievement record. We can also navigate to documentation via the tabs at the top of the page. These tab sections will take us straight to the forms. Under the Start tab, we have the forms to be completed at the beginning of the placement. For example, within the first week of the student's placement, they will need to complete a placement orientation form. To preview any form, click the form title to expand that section. When we want to complete a form, click the Complete New button. And on the form page, we can work our way through the form to completion. In the form view, we can save multiple draft versions of the form. This can be useful when working on a form. However, we may not be at the stage to finalize and complete. If we wish to rename the draft form, we can use the field available on the left-hand side. We can also delete a draft if we no longer need it. The Saved button on the top right will change to Save Changes if any amendments have been made to the form. This indicates that we have changes to be saved. If there are no changes, the Save button will remain disabled. If we wish to exit without submitting the form, click the Save and Close button. When we return to the main form section, next to the Complete New button, we can see a number indicating how many draft versions we have saved against the form. To open a draft version form, click the down arrow against the Complete New button and select the draft document. We will then be able to continue working on the form. If we have made changes to the form and have not saved those changes, the ePAD will automatically save the changes after approximately 15 seconds of inactivity. However, it is important to save as you continue to work, as this will prevent you accidentally losing potential information. If the form requires sign-off before submitting, the sign-off details will need to be completed. The form should be completed in the company of the practice staff member, or have their explicit permission to use their details on their behalf. With this form, you can hand this over to them to complete on your behalf. Completing these details will fully secure the form and lock it down. Finally, when we are ready to submit the form, click the Submit button. A receipt will then be emailed to the practice staff member's email address as confirmation their details were used to sign off the form. A copy of this completed form will then appear under the Form section, marked as completed by the user signed into the ePAD account. After a few moments, this will update to Approved by, with the name of the person who signed off the form. In addition to completing documentation, we have the Practice Hours button at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. This button will always be available to students within the ePAD. We can select the button anytime to add practice hours. On the Submit Practice Hours pop-up window, we can select the placement and placement area. We can select the activity type, the date and duration of the practice hours. Under the Approver Name field, the practice supervisor who will sign off the hours will enter their full name and work email address. Just as with signing off a form, the approver details should be completed in the company of the practice supervisor, or have their explicit permission to use their details. Finally, select the Submit button. Once the practice hours have been submitted, we can view the updated practice hours dial on the summary dashboard. To view all of the practice hours submitted, we can select the practice hours icon on the left-hand side. On this page, we can see the full record of all the recorded practice hours. This is color-coded to display the total hours for each activity type, for example day shift, night shift, and sickness and absence. Finally, there is also an option to converse with your practice or academic assessor directly within the ePAD. We can click the Messages icon on the left-hand side. On the Messages page, we can see all communication we have with those staff members. Using the message box, we can directly message those staff members, and then select the Send Message button. When we receive a new message, we will see the message notification icon displayed at the top right-hand side of the screen. We can click on the icon to see a preview of the message, and then select the preview message to access the message page. You will not receive any notifications when you have received a new message when outside of the ePAD. Therefore, messages should only be used for informal, non-urgent communication. Finally, when we are ready to sign out of the ePAD, we can click the Sign Out icon at the top right of the screen. This is important to know if you are using a shared computer.